I just need to say this. I just need to blurt it out. Okay. I just need to get it out. I'm so tired of waking up crying. I'm so tired of crying myself to sleep. I don't like the language around comparison being the blame for all things that are emotionally off with us. I think comparison sometimes can be healthy when you have the discernment to know that you are comparing because not because you're jealous, but this is a desire of yours. Like, I will find myself crying, like having a breakdown. And in the midst of it, I'm like, oh my God, when I get to tell this story to someone who's going to need to hear it, I'm going to remember this part of it, you know? So even though I'm in it, I'm already starting to see myself out of it. Life can be so complex. The human experience is far more expansive than what we can see, and we spend so much time just trying to figure it out. We put on makeup, nice clothing, and we go out into the world trying to hold it all together. When beneath those seams, we are being ripped apart. Some of the ripping is self-inflicted, some of it is because of the pressure of society, but all of it is limiting. Limiting in our quest to just simply be who we truly are. We're more complex than we give ourselves credit for. We fill our brains with popular sayings like, oh, it ain't that serious, loosen up, or just live a little. But life in itself is a deep, non-surface level experience, and sometimes it can be pretty serious. So often we force ourselves to only exist at the surface, never allowing ourselves to be fully exposed. We let the layers pile up until the pressure becomes too much to bear, and then we rip. Sometimes into shreds, and a lot of the times in silence. Beneath means to go below the surface, and seams are what are supposed to keep us joined together. Because we are taught, no matter what, you just have to keep yourself together. We create this image, never letting people in, never going beneath the seams. I don't know if we ever get the answers we expect from life, but I'm starting to find peace in the process of just figuring it out. Instead of forcing the complexities of this human experience to be hidden, let's peel back the layers and go beneath them. Beneath the seams, a love letter to millennials who are just trying to figure it out. Child, not me dropping them 2 little episodes and then falling off into the deep end of depression and ghosting y'all. Yikes. Ooh, child. But we back, okay? Listen. It is a journey. It is a process. I'm glad you're here. I'm here. Great. We're all here. Welcome back to another episode of Beneath the Seams, where we peel back the layers and get personal. I'm your host, Kayla Riggins. And listen, I just need to say this. I just need to blurt it out. Okay. I just need to get it out. I'm so tired of waking up crying. I'm so tired of crying myself to sleep. And I feel like that is just the place that I've been in, because there is this tug of energy that is calling me for more. And I cannot figure out the action in this season that I need to take to get to that more. And so in the production process of this podcast, I was really getting caught up in my head about the process and how I wanted things to be and how I wanted things to look. And I'm like, you know what? I just want to be in flow. Like, I really want this to be an experience where I'm talking about what's going on in real time. As a creative, it's important to have like your process in place, right? And so production is like a thing for me. Like I did it professionally. And so it's not worth my time to sit down and just record one thing. If I'm gonna sit down and record, I'm usually batch creating. And I think I kind of got in my head about that because batch creating doesn't necessarily go with this experience in terms of a workflow, because I want it to be, you know, my real time diary of what's going on in my life and what's going on with other millennials that I'm talking to and just everything that we all are experiencing. And sometimes that's going to be a very much in the moment type of flow. I'm not going to be able to pre-think about it or pre-record it 2-3 weeks in advance. So while I'm on this journey of figuring that part out, thank y'all for bearing with me, but I am committed to showing up to this seat. I love it here. And yeah, we're gonna thug it out. We're gonna figure it out. So I just needed to blurt that out to y'all. I am so tired of crying myself to sleep. And the theme that keeps coming up in my head when I'm wondering why is I keep thinking, God, when is it going to be my turn? When am I up next? I think I have gotten a little frustrated in the wait, and I'm getting a little weary in the wait. And that's some of the things that I'm currently studying in my spiritual journey. But I'm just being honest, like sometimes waiting is hard, particularly when you see so much, we're overexposed to so much information. It's hard sometimes to wait your turn. And so when I start to have these deep feelings, I'm deep all the time. I'm like, girl, when you start to have these deep feelings, you mean every day, all day, because that's who you are. But when the feelings get deeper than normal, I really start to kind of audit what have I been going through? Who have I been talking to? Who have I been around? What type of conversations am I having to kind of make me start to feel that way? And when I started to feel like this, I just had went through a couple of experiences that I think really played a part. And so a couple of weeks ago, I spent the entire weekend working, and it was good stuff, but it was a lot of content creation. I had a speaking engagement, and I found myself around an energy that I quickly realized I would no longer be able to be a part of because it was draining me. We hear all the time about having to dim your light, but I try not to subscribe to that so quickly. Like, girl, everybody ain't trying to dim your light, right? Everybody ain't trying to hate on you. Everybody, is not trying to take you down. I feel like if you go through life thinking like that, sometimes you have a very pessimistic experience. And so while those things are true, and people do be trying to dim your light, I try not to go through life meeting people with that at the door, right? So I always like to say, and this is a whole different topic, but when it comes to dating in particular, I feel like men, you start at 0 and you have to work your way up to 100 when dating a man. But with women, I feel like we start at 100 and then you work your way down to 0. So it's really just a perspective thing. But with me, I like to meet people and just start at 100. That's more of an optimistic experience for me. But when you show up how I do, and it becomes a pattern where you show up in spaces and people, frankly, start to try to dim your light, it's like, it's hard for us extroverted, super outspoken, confident, stand our ground type of people to navigate those spaces. And so it was a weekend where I was in a space that was really tough for me to navigate. And it's crazy because a lot of times you realize this in hindsight, but in the moment I was like, this doesn't feel good. This relationship with this person is probably over. And I need to make sure that I don't ignore these feelings again, because I was feeling so drained and empty, but I was in a creative environment. And so you would think that those two things don't go together. But I was just really exhausted from the energy that was happening around me. And then the very next day, okay, one of my cousins was in town, and her sister lives here in Atlanta, and she wanted me to meet her. She had been talking about her for a while. And she's also an entrepreneur. And so my cousin came over to the house with her husband, and we just kind of ordered in, chill. It was great. But when her sister came over, I was like, have her come to the house. Like, I'm always down to meet people. And so we ended up having a great conversation. But because we're both entrepreneurs, the conversation naturally goes that route. And it just got so heavy so quickly. And this is no part on my cousin's sister, because she's great. And so I want to make sure that I'm not saying that her energy imposed anything on me. But what it did was it caused me to have to stop and think and get really reflective on why having that conversation made me feel so drained. And so we were talking. So my cousin she just had a birthday, actually. So she just turned 51, I think. And then her sister, I think, will be 50 later this year. And so I think it's important to give that context, because y'all know the generation that came right before us, which is their generation. I don't even know what's their name. I feel like millennials have the coolest generation name. What's the name of the people who like 46, 47, and 50? What's the name of their generation? Put it in the comments if you know. But I feel like that generation, they've always kind of came in as like the big sister, big brother vibe, but also kind of gave us a hard time. Millennials get so much hate. Like I remember my first few jobs in corporate America, people just loved calling you entitled and just love, identifying what was different about you and saying it was a bad thing, when I really just feel like we were that transitional generation moving into a new age, moving into, technology and just different ways of doing things. And we didn't have to do it in a way that was as hard as they may have seemed their way was, right? And so for that, it was a low key, like a little jealousy, if you will. So anyway, so we're sitting at my dining room table and we're talking about entrepreneurship and just what I'm going through in business, some of my ideas and where I want to take the business. And I was like, ooh, this conversation is just heavy. I didn't say this to her. I'm answering her questions. It's good conversation. But in that conversation, she says, what do you want? Like, really, what do you really want out of life? And I looked at her and I said, I want to be happy. And she started to chuckle. And I was like, what? She was like, nothing. And I was like, say it. You got to say it. And she was like, I just feel like you millennials having the expectation to always be happy is just not realistic. And I welcome these types of conversations. Like, I don't get defensive. I feel like we can learn a thing or two or five from the generations who've come before us. But while I welcome them, I definitely push back when I feel like it's necessary, because we're the only ones living in this experience. So we know what we're doing and we know when we don't know what we're doing. And so when I'm very confident with a certain point, I do push back in these conversations. And I was like, yeah, I just want to be happy. And she chuckled and I said, your laugh scared me. I was like, how come my desire to be happy is funny? Like, let me know, since you've lived a little longer than me, is that not possible? Like, is it possible for me to actually be happy and enjoy what I do while making a living? Like, is it possible for me to like my job, like my business, and be happy? And she said, yes, but I think you guys have the impression that it's always going to be happy all the time. To which I quickly interjected and I said, no, we don't have the impression that it's going to be happy all the time, but we are so determined to make happy be the majority of the time. Because when we look at our parents, I don't know how old you guys' parents are, but my mama didn't have me since she was 30, which is late for a baby boomer, right? My mama, she gonna be 64 in a couple of weeks. And so she didn't have me until she was 30 years old, which for her generation was behind. Like, her peers, their kids are like people she went to high school with. They're like 45, like much older than me. And so I said to her, no, it's not that millennials expect to be happy all the time. Like, we understand that life is going to have its ebbs and flows and ups and downs. But what we're not willing to do is sacrifice happiness for the majority of the time. And that's what we watched our parents do. They took whatever job, they did whatever they had to do for the sake of survival. And they never really, really sought out true, genuine, pure happiness. And I think for us, we are the generation that had the awakening of like, wait a minute, I want to make more of this life than just going to somebody's job or just building a business. Like, what does happiness look like outside of the success of monetary things or the success of accomplishments? And I think in having that conversation with her, it fell so heavy on me because she was right in a lot that she was saying in regards to how I need to, approach my business, what my goals are and how to accomplish them. But I couldn't help but think in that moment, I don't really care about none of this right now. I just want to be unapologetically me. And I want to be able to show up in spaces where that's accepted. And I want to be happy. Like, I don't want to have to build a life that is centered around financial stability at the risk of my happiness. And so we definitely came to a common ground by the end of that conversation. And we saw each other, right? Like it was a very good conversation, but I was just so drained. And so that was a Sunday. And so the other incident had happened that Saturday. And Monday was just a wipeout for me. Like I didn't want to talk to nobody. I didn't want to see anybody. Like I just needed to recalibrate. As extroverted as I am, remember, I'm an only child. So going inside, closing the door, shutting the blinds and not talking to nobody for a smooth 48 hours, I'm cool with that. Like I'm not one of those people who just has to always be around people. And so I just shut it down for about a smooth 24 hours to get my thoughts together. I value the opinions of other people, especially when I consider them a friend or a loved one. But I'm very careful not to start to share my feelings until I have fully processed them myself. And the reason for that is when something is fresh, I feel like you're very vulnerable and your conscious, subconsciously, could be penetrated very easily. And so I like to get really clear on how do I actually feel about this? How did this really make me feel? What are my true non-influenced thoughts about this situation? I like to come to a clear understanding with myself before I say, hey friend, hey cousin, hey mama, what you think about this? Here's what I'm going through, what you think, right? And I just want to make sure that my decisions are my own, because so often we're doing things that are not our own decisions. Like we're just going through the motions of life of what someone else has described life should look like. And so in my spiritual journey, in my time with God, I'm asking like, God, show me and show me through the lens of you. I really feel like if you are seeking to understand who you are, the best way to do that is to go and get clearer on who God is, because we're made in his image, right? And so if I need to know more about who I am, I need to go see what's up with big God, because if you made me like you, then I got to know who you are to know who I am. And so that's the space that I've been in. That kind of explains me dropping those 2 episodes and then dipping. I'm just figuring it out. And I think, again, that is the premise of this podcast, is being in a space where you understand no matter what's going on in life, you're going to constantly be figuring something out. And so my goal here is to continue to find the peace in the process of just figuring it out. I say that in the trailer. Another thing that was really contributing to all of my thoughts, and y'all know that social media. Y'all know I love it. I consider the internet to be the great equalizer. Like I don't really hang out on the negative side of it. And so I don't really subscribe to, oh, it's so toxic. Oh, the internet is so this. I more so hang out on the Tabitha Brown side of the internet. And what I mean by that is a lot of the things that I subscribe to or that come across my feed are positive. And I'm like, this is why the internet needed to be a thing. I don't really experience the other side of that. And so when I think about in what ways it does affect me, of course, it's when people share things that you desire. And see, the thing about comparison is you have to just be very aware of when it's happening so that you can shake yourself out of it. I'm a human being. I'm having a very human experience, and it is human nature to compare. I don't like the language around comparison being the blame for all things that are emotionally off with us. I think comparison sometimes can be healthy when you have the discernment to know that you are comparing not because you're jealous, but this is a desire of yours and this person may be experiencing it. And so you're comparing because you want to maybe take notes or learn information or just get a better understanding of what that experience will be like for you once you actually have obtained it or once you have it, right? Depending on what you're comparing yourself to. And so I follow a lot of creators who are just so inspiring. Like, again, I don't have the toxic side of the internet. And so they're so inspiring and unapologetic in sharing their journeys. But baby, In the midst of me going down a downward spiral, I stumbled across this tweet. And let me read it to y'all because I was like, now see, you trying to sneak on up in here, devil, and you finna get out because not today. So it was from one of my favorite creators. His name is Adrian. He does a lot of like cinematic mini vlogs and mini movies, really. And so he tweeted, I want to read it verbatim for y'all. He said, it took me 11 years of posting my art on Instagram to go from 0 to 19,000 followers. Then from January of 2023 to now, I went from that to 500,000. In a span of 14 months, my 11 years of work seemingly looked like an overnight success to everyone. It wasn't. It's just that I never gave up. So let's unpack, okay? Upon initially seeing this, the first thing that came to mind was what I kind of preferenced this episode. The theme of around this episode is, God, when is it going to be my turn? And I think that was the first thing that came to mind because it really resonated with me. He said, it took me 11 years of posting my art on Instagram to go from 0 to 19K followers. I have been posting online since 2012. I have 19,000 followers. So just from a numbers perspective, and y'all know analytics aren't everything. So that's not even the conversation we're about to have. But just from a numbers perspective, immediately that stood out. So when people have matching data, you're going to find yourself comparing. That's just human nature. And so I continued to read it. And when he got to the end, he said in that time, so that was the first 11 years, he went from 19K to 500K in a year. And he says to people who don't know, that looks like an overnight success, but it wasn't. He just never gave up. And so it started off with comparison of, dang, like, God, when is it my turn? But as I got to the end of his thread, he talked about how he just never gave up. And for me, I'm like, that's why I needed to see that. Because when you are in a space of feeling weary, you need to see the stories of people who made it to the other side. And not that my goal is 500,000 followers, right? But I do have goals in this space in terms of how I want my business and my brand to grow, and just my personal goals in terms of how I want to evolve as a person. And so when you see things like that, it is human nature for you to stop and be like, well, when is it my turn? And so that was the comparison piece. But I was very quickly able to turn that around and look at it as inspiration and motivation and evidence and proof of what is possible when you stay the course. And so I always like to say, when God starts blessing other people, don't get jealous of that. Don't be envious of that. It's letting you know he's able, he's possible, and that he's in the neighborhood. When my friends, when people around me, when they start having breakthroughs and things that, they've been praying for or longing for start coming to the light, I sit back and I say, okay, God, that means you're in the neighborhood. If you just bless my friend, you on your way to my house, And so that's just kind of how I've been working through these ideas of comparison, because we're overexposed. And unless you just completely like delete the internet, delete all your newspapers, do people still get newspapers? Probably. I think my mama still get a newspaper. Delete all of your means of delete all of your means of digesting media. Unless you do that, you're going to be inundated in some form or fashion in regards to knowing the success or the accomplishments of somebody else, of a lot of people, really. One of the things, one of my favorite creators, OG, I always say she taught me everything I know about how to beat this face. Jackie Anna always says, like, social media ain't everybody's highlight reel. Like, these are actually some people's real lives. And everybody ain't just putting on, like, some people really do have it like that. And I enjoy that perspective so much when she first said it, because you do get caught up in this, oh, it's not real. Everybody's just fronting. People really broke. And it starts to make you feel better about your own circumstances. When I would rather look at that from the lens of, some people are doing it. Some people are rich. There are people out here who have abundance. And so to see that they have abundance, it lets me know what is possible. It lets me know what God is capable of doing. I don't like how we try to, Everything that is abundant, we try to blame it on anything that's other than God. This person, has a multi-million dollar business. So, they must be a devil worshiper. Or this person just broke all of these records, so they must be in the Illuminati. Y'all got to check that. Check that spirit of whenever you hear somebody having more than what's normal, then it has to be evil, that it has to be the devil. What does that say about your God? What does that say about our God? What does that say about your faith if everything good that's happening for someone else has to be because of a cause that is not of God and of themselves and of the hard work that they've done, right? And so that's the perspective that I take. I'm a human being. I am going to compare. I'm going to cry. I'm going to experience jealousy. That is a real, natural human emotion. I think a lot of these words have a negative connotation, and so we run from them and we like, oh no, I'm not jealous. Oh no, I'm not the jealous type. I mean, I think there's a different layers of jealousy. So I do think that some of them can be deemed as negative, but foundationally, I think to be jealous is a human emotion. I think what you do with it and how you internalize it and how you now take it and apply it to your desires or your worldview is what makes you a non-malicious hearted person, right? When your heart posture is good and you and Jesus is sewed up and y'all tight, I think you're able to better handle the different emotions of comparison, of jealousy. And so, that's the journey I've been on, been journaling, okay, waking up, praying, because I have surrendered. I have given it all to God. I cannot do this. I will not try to do this without him. And so that's just where I'm at. Most days I feel like I'm losing my mind. No, really, y'all. Like most days I feel absolutely insane. But even in those moments of feeling insane, I feel this overwhelming sense of calmness. I feel like I'm going through a becoming, right? I'm becoming bigger, better, more self-actualized. I'm getting to know more about me and I'm becoming new versions of myself. So even when I'm going crazy in this house and I feel off my rocker, I'm very almost immediately calm. And I feel God's presence and I'm at peace with the fact that this is a part of the process. And I calm myself down by accepting that detail. I was out with a friend co-working, my friend Jonay, a few weeks ago. And I was telling her, I was like, am I crazy that even in the midst of it's storming outside, I see my way, and I'm using that metaphorically, but when it's storming in my life, I start to think about what this is going to be like as a part of my testimony. Even when it comes to my joy of content creation, I made a point to document my life, like really document it this year, more vlogging and stuff like that, because I'd be like, when I'm that girl for real, they're going to need footage for my documentary. I often think about how Kanye had all of that footage when it was time to do his documentary. And that's because there was an inner being inside of that man who knew and was affirmed of what was to come and who he was going to be. And so that documentary changed my life. And I wasn't doing that. That documentary is like, 2-3 years old. And so I wasn't doing that. And so this year I was like, you got to get back to the roots of what you really enjoy and start doing those things. And so in that conversation, I'm like, I will find myself crying, like having a breakdown. And in the midst of it, I'm like, oh my God, when I get to tell this story to someone who's going to need to hear it, I'm going to remember this part of it, So even though I'm in it, I'm already starting to see myself out of it. It's so interesting. It's like a complete, spiritual awakening. And there are a lot of dark times, if I'm being honest. Some days are very dark for me, but I am light. I truly believe that. And because I keep going back to God, he is keeping me. And so I'm super, super grateful for that. First of all, I did my thing with the set design today. If you are watching on YouTube, you see it. If you're not, go watch on YouTube so you can see it. So this is the sunroom in my apartment, and I use it as my office slash studio space. Might have to give y'all a little tour in a vlog one day. But I love this view that I have of the trees, and it just makes me feel like I'm sitting in a garden, okay? And I wanted to shoot here. Like, I've always wanted to shoot with this as a background, but it's kind of hard to set up. So anyway, I got up this morning and I was like, I'm gonna figure this out. So that also makes me feel new and refreshed and innovative. Y'all know I get bored with the mundane. And so even just not being tied to having to sit in the same place every time I want a podcast, it's like, okay, that makes it, fun for me, fresh for me, creative for me. So just little things like that. I encourage you to figure out what those little things are. And again, everybody's not going to identify as a creative. I think we all are creative, but I get that everybody won't identify as that. But figuring out what are those little things, those little pockets of peace, those little things that fill up your cup that you can do to continue to refresh your day. Every day is brand new, and I want to be able to have experiences that are also new with that day. I don't like having to do the same thing just over and over, rinse and repeat every day. Like, what kind of life is that? And so I'm on this path to even the smallest things, like taking a different route home so that I could see a different line of trees, right? Just the smallest things to make sure that every day has a piece of significance that only belongs to that day. It may be a little deep. I get it. I know people feel like, oh my God, it ain't that serious. You really gonna go into the street home? Yes. That's how I want to live my life. Okay. That's me and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? You figure yours out. Another thing in regards to the whole comparison piece and the wondering when it's going to be your turn, I think comparison can be healthy because it makes you aware to stay the course of whatever your longings are. And so if you're in a space like myself, if you are wondering, when is it going to be my turn? That's not something you should ignore. Keep on wandering and pondering on those thoughts. Those are tiny meditations that help you actualize and manifest and pray for the things that you want. The frustration with me wondering, when is it going to be my turn? That made me act. That made me get up and do something. That makes me continue to get up and do something, because when it is my turn, I want to be able to look back and say, I worked for this. Here's what I did. Here's what happened in between those years. This is not something that happened overnight. So while to some people it may be like, boo, get off the internet, throw tomatoes, you're comparing yourself. To me, it's like, nah, I see you, God. I see God. I just be seeing God in so many things. And it's probably because of the path that I'm on. But like in the smallest things, I see and feel God, and I see messages. And so I'm just grateful for that. And I hope that if you are in a season of wondering when it's your turn, you don't let it defeat you. You don't let it make you stop. You don't let it take you down. Even if you're weary in the wait like myself, I want you to figure out how to take that energy and get activated so that you can accomplish, so that you can experience your turn. Because I don't know about y'all, but my turn is on the way. Mark this day, mark this time. My turn is on the way. And they're going to use this footage in my documentary. Okay, so there is a part of, so we're still getting beneath the scenes together in terms of, y'all know, I'm a TV producer by trade. I graduated from Clark Atlanta University. I studied broadcast television, moved to New York, worked in New York as a TV producer, used to work for BET, a couple of other media publications, blah, 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 right? So the way I see TV and the way I see production is really through such a professional lens. And as a little girl, I've always wanted a talk show. And I think podcasting in many ways is my talk show. And so because I know how to produce TV, I understand how it's made, I've always seen it from a segment-like experience. So figuring out how I want to incorporate those different things into my show. I want to know from you guys too, any ideas that you're having, like talk back to me. This is our show. This is our community. So we go beneath the scenes together. I ain't the only one peeling back these layers. So one of the segments that I want to do, I want to read you all's comments and answer a question, or if your comments just provoke a thought or something that I want to talk about, I want to address it on each episode. I don't know what to name it though. I want it to be like a segment, I don't know, from the comment section or something like that. That's kind of lame. I don't know. Y'all like that? I don't know. Let me know. But like, let's put our creative heads together. What can I call the segment where we read a comment from the videos or Instagram? It could be a comment from anywhere on social, but regarding the podcast. So y'all let me know in the chat, in the chat, y'all, like I'm on the Zoom. Y'all let me know in the comments if you have a specific name that you think would be cute to call that. I much appreciate you already because I know y'all finna comment. Okay. Yes, that was my way of saying, go ahead and comment. All right. So for this week's, I'm going to read a question from the question and answer portion comment section because I don't really have a name for the segment yet. In the episode titled Everything They Told Us About the 30s is a Lie, that was episode 2. And I talked about how Oprah was 32. There was a comment. Oh, wait, y'all, I'm lying. That ain't it. Look how I just told a big lie. Hold on. It was actually episode 1. And that episode title was, hold on, let me go back to it. Okay. So that episode title was How to Refocus After Abandoning Your Dreams, Bleeding from the Outside In was that episode title. And I talked a lot about, just getting refocused. And there was a young lady who left a comment, and I want to read it and kind of answer her question and then use it for discussion. So she said, Gen Z here. So her name is Asia Shamir. Thank you, Asia, for your comment, girl. She said, Gen Z here. I know this video was for millennials, but what advice would you give to Gen Zs? First of all, this video was not just for millennials. I know that that's what I say in all of the messaging around the show, but that's just because that's the experience that I live. I'm a millennial because I just happened to be born in 1991. But I understand that this experience will resonate with everybody. When I had this as an IGT series in its original form back in 2019, it would be people from all ages, all demographics who definitely resonated with the content. So I understand it. So don't ever feel excluded. If you happen to be watching or listening and you ain't a millennial, we welcome you here. Don't you turn it off, okay? You belong in this space. If you resonate with anything that I'm saying, then you are my people. We see each other. So she says, Gen Z here. I know this video was for millennials, but what advice would you give to Gen Zs, especially the ones in college, on avoiding mistakes and ensuring we follow our calling? So I said to her, ooh, this good, because that was a great question, Asia. I said, it's not exclusively for millennials, explaining that to her. And so the answer that I gave her in the comments was to dig deeper to discover those pieces of you that make your soul glow, and don't ignore the things you can't stop thinking about. And then I said, lastly, when you make decisions, check in with yourself to see how heavily influenced those decisions are by outside opinions. Take the time to make choices that are really aligned with you. That is the advice that I gave her. And so, first of all, again, such a great question because she's in college. So that's when you start to really kind of figure out who you are a little bit. And I want people in general, but especially when you're young, because you just have so much, and not that I'm old, like I'm still very young, but I'm older than her. And so when you're in college, those 21, 22s, you still have so much of your life ahead of you. And if you get grounded that early on, I think you really become unstoppable in terms of going after what you want. And that's why I said to her, like, when you make decisions, do that gut check. Make sure that that decision is your own. Actually do an audit. How much of this decision is influenced by something that somebody else said, by somebody's suggestion, by something someone told me that I should do? Do I really want to do this? I think it's so important to have that gut check because we spend all of our lives from the time we are 2 years old and we start to talk a little bit, listening to other people, being told what to do. And then that progresses into elementary school where, again, we're told what to do. And then by the time you make it to high school graduation, somebody's telling you, oh, you should go to college, or you should go to the military, or you should be a doctor, it's like at none of those steps does anybody stop to say, what do you want to do? It's like a lifetime of being told what to do. And so like I said in that video, and I'll say it again here, I'm on this journey of making sure that from these days forward, everything that I do is because it is a self-led, intentional thought that is centered around who I'm meant to become in my life and who I'm supposed to become in Christ, right? How I'm supposed to serve, how I'm supposed to fulfill God's calling on my life. And so I'm curious to know if you guys, I would pose that question kind of in a backwards way. What would you tell your college self? What would you do differently, or just what are some things you would have maybe focused more or focused less on back when, if you're a millennial, my age, I'm 33. So if you're in my millennial age group, what would you have focused more on back then? For me, I was really well-rounded and I've always been self-led. I think I would have focused on, honestly, entrepreneurship in the realm of branding Kayla. I wouldn't have never stopped, and I would have figured out how to fund those goals without having to take this job here, or because psychologically I started to think that my success was tied up into having a corporate job and climbing the ladder and having, benefits and all of those things. One of the thoughts that kind of haunts me in this experience of feeling like, when is it going to be my turn, is I started a while ago, 2012, right? So we're talking 14 years, but there was a lot of starting and stopping. And so sometimes I beat myself up and I'm like, if you would have just kept going consistently, going hard for 14 years, where would you be now? And so I almost get mad at myself because I'm like, girl, you asking, when is it going to be your turn? It could have been your turn. But again, I'm finding peace in the process of figuring it out. And for whatever reason, it has taken and it is taking me 14 years in this journey to really get to having my turn. So that's all of the feelings, the tears, the oohs and ahs, and the self-reflection that has been going down in this brain of mine. I want to know what's been going down in y'all's. I love sitting and having these conversations with you all. Soon I want to start having some conversations with some other people. So we're going to pray on it. Okay. We're going to see it through. And listen, I want you guys to subscribe. If you are listening via the Apple Podcast, Spotify, make sure you actually subscribe so you can be notified. Also, if anything that I said resonated with you, could you please leave a review? That's just your tiny way of letting me know that this was helpful, funny, entertaining, whatever adjective you choose. Okay. You can say, oh girl, your lipstick was popping. Okay. Thank you. Can you leave a review? If you in any way benefited from this, I would just love to know that. And so it only takes a few minutes. I would love to hear what your thoughts are. Leave a comment, subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. If you really my friend for real, give me the YouTube experience and the Apple Podcast experience so it could count all of the ways it can count. Okay. I really appreciate y'all. And listen, wherever you are in your journey, whatever you are going through, if you are feeling like, when will it be my turn? I just hope, my prayer for you is that you find peace in the process of just figuring it out. That will do it for this episode of Beneath the Seams. I will see you guys next time.